On the evening of September 19th, 1961, married couple Barney and Betty Hill were travelling home from a vacation to Niagara Falls in Montreal, Canada. They had been driving for much of the day and were nearly to their home in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. While passing through just south of Lancaster, around 10:30 p.m, Betty noticed a few small but bright star-like spots of light in the night sky. They moved from below her perspective of the moon upwards to the left and then to the right, across the face of the moon. At first, Betty assumed it was some sort of falling star, only this star moved in ways she had never seen before. She watched as the lights travelled in a sporadic and unpredictable movement, while they also appeared to grow in size and luminosity. Eventually, Betty convinced Barney to pull over to get a better look at the anomaly, which he only agreed to because their dachshund, Delsey, needed to be walked. Using binoculars, Betty claimed to see that the source of the flashing lights was some kind of aircraft, one of which she was unfamiliar with. In the past, Betty had heard rumours of reported UFO sightings from her friends and family, so her mind immediately assumed this was what she was experiencing. When Barney got a look through the binoculars, at first he deduced that the supposed UFO was a commercial airplane en route to Vermont. However, after some time observing its truly acrobatic-like movements, he considered it to be some sort of top-secret government testing, and did not want to believe the possibility of it being some sort of extraterrestrial UFO. This startled Barney enough to urge the family back into the car to continue driving on their route home, which was nearing a pass through the mountains. As they continued driving, the Hills recall the UFO remaining in their field of view, coming even closer than it was before. Barney almost felt like they had been targeted by the craft, and it was following them. As they neared a familiar picnicking area known as Indian Head, the UFO descended so close and so rapidly to the Hills' car that Barney abruptly stopped the car in the middle of the road. The craft now hovered in front of them about 100 above the car, taking up the field of view of the windshield. They recall it being flat and wide in shape, and it appeared to be rotating. Barney stepped out to have a look, first retrieving his pistol from the trunk of the car and holstering it within his pocket. He stepped away from the vehicle and then recalls feeling compelled to peer through the binoculars up towards the craft. He then observed anywhere from 8 to 11 human-like figures that moved with robotic, almost German soldier-like efficiency. They appeared to stare back at him, and although far away, Barney was able to see they were wearing what appeared to be black uniforms. In the next moment, all but one of the figures moved away. The one remaining appeared to be at a desk or terminal of some sort, and Barney assumed they were the leader. Barney then received a message, either verbally or telepathically, that said, "Stay where you are and keep looking." Due either to fear or an unknown force, Barney was seemingly unable to take the binoculars away from his eyes. In this moment, he was convinced that the beings aboard the craft were not human. The craft then continued to lower about 60 feet above him and 300 feet away. Fin-like structures then protruded from the craft and began to telescope towards him. At this point, Barney was in such a state of shock that he found the strength to tear the binoculars away from his eyes, in turn breaking the leather neck strap. Near a state of hysteria, he returned to the car, warning Betty that he thought they were about to be captured. The craft proceeded to move directly above their car, and Barney tore off down the road. Next, they heard what sounded like a rhythmic pattern of buzzes or beeps coming from the trunk of their car. The entire car began to vibrate, and tingling, almost numbing sensation passed through their bodies. In the next few moments, their memories became spotty, and both experienced states of altered, unaware consciousness. Just as fast as they heard the few series of buzzing sounds, they heard another, and the two returned to their normal, coherent states of mind. They were still in the car, and were surprised to find they were nearly 40 miles from where they last remembered. When they finally did return home, they noted that it was much later in the night than they had expected to return back. It was nearly 5 in the morning. After the initial sighting of the craft, they had apparently lost about 2 hours of time after the event. Although their memories were spotty, they did recall making a sharp, unplanned turn into the woods, and then coming upon some sort of roadblock and observing a fiery, glowing ball of light in their path. After getting some rest, the Hills awoke in the early afternoon and immediately noticed some out-of-the-ordinary sensations and bodily impulses. Barney found the broken leather neck strap from the binoculars, however he could not recall how they broke. Betty insisted that their luggage be placed at the side door rather than the front, for fear of some sort of radiation from the event. Barney, who was known as a meticulous dresser, found his dress shoes from the ride home were scuffed, scratched, and basically ruined. Betty found the dress she was wearing from the night before to be torn and tattered at the zipper and hemline. There was also a strange pink powder-like substance on the dress that blew away when hung on the clothesline. She also insisted on taking a long shower to wash away feelings of contamination, and Barney felt compelled to inspect his private parts in the bathroom, but found nothing unexpected. In addition to this odd behaviour and discoveries, the couple also found that neither of the watches they wore from the incident worked any longer. The Hills tried to reconstruct their memories of the events from the night and early morning, but they had seemingly lost time. They remembered the initial encounter, but after the buzzing sensations, their memories were fragmented. Betty, against Barney's request, informed her sister of the incident. One of her sister's neighbours was a scientist, and he suggested they try placing a compass near their car and belongings and record the results. Barney came to find small, concentric circles on the trunk of the car, and the compass needle would whirl around rapidly when placed near them. Being an interracial couple in 1960s United States of America, Barney did not want to bring their experience into public attention. Although they were both highly respected, dignified, and intelligent people within their community, the state of racial tension within the US simply did not favour interracial relationships at the time, and Barney was wise to keep unwanted tribulation out of their lives. He also feared they would be labelled as lunatics for even mentioning an encounter with possible extraterrestrial life. Approximately 10 days after the incident, Betty claimed to have been having several vivid dreams for 5 nights in a row. They occupied her mind constantly throughout the day, and after those 5 nights, they never returned. She proceeded to document the dreams for future reference. In one, she dreamt that Barney and herself were driving in their car at night, and was stopped when they encountered a roadblock, and several men surrounded the car. In the next instant, 2 small men were leading her against her will through a path in the forest. She noticed Barney behind her and cried out to him, but he was in some sort of trance. She estimated the captors in her dream were just over 5 feet tall, wearing dark blue military-style uniforms. She noticed their human-like appearance, but with grey skin, blue lips, and dark eyes. The Hills were led into a disc-shaped craft, like the one they remembered encountering, and they were taken into separate rooms, which she protested against. She was spoken to by their leader and an examiner, and they both spoke very broken English, which she could hardly understand. She was told their bodies would be tested to compare the differences between the Hills and them. She was placed into what reminded her of a dentist chair, and the examiner examined her head, including her hair, ears, mouth, teeth, then other parts of her body, like her hands, fingernails, legs, and feet. He then unexpectedly inserted a needle into her navel region. This caused Betty an intense amount of pain, and the leader responded by waving his hand over her forehead, and the pain went away. After the examination, Betty began a conversation with the leader, and she was offered a book. The book was filled with symbols she had never seen before. The leader said she could keep the book, but then an argument broke out among the creatures, and she was unable to. Against Barney's wishes, Betty ended up reporting their incident to the Peace Air Force Base, and they were followed up with for a long-form interview. The report was eventually sent to the US Air Force's UFO research team, called Project Blue Book. During the interviews, the Hills talked about having some form of amnesia during a certain time period of the experience. This was the first case involving a UFO that was accompanied with missing time. The Hills were then referred to Dr. Benjamin Simon, a Boston psychiatrist well-versed in hypnotism. They agreed to undergo a series of hypnosis sessions. However, Simon insisted they be separate for their sessions, in order to keep each of their stories separate. During Barney's sessions, he became nearly hysterical, describing his overwhelming feelings of fear and helplessness during the whole ordeal. He then recalled events nearly identical to Betty's dreams, as well as exams on his male reproductive organs. Betty's sessions were similar, with the added fact that during the abduction, she had asked the beings where they were from, and they showed her a three-dimensional star map. They asked if she knew where she was located on the map. She did not. They explained it would be too difficult to explain. Simon concluded that the pair had suffered some form of unknown trauma, but their stories were simply made up from Betty's dream. At any rate, the therapy calmed their anxieties from the event. Betty made a sketch of the star map, and at the time, it was not an existing star map. In 1969, astronomer Marjorie Fish was intrigued by the story and constructed a more detailed map from Betty's sketch. The results found that the star map Betty was supposedly shown closely resembled the double star system known as Zeta Reticuli, hence the other alias of this incident. Perhaps the Hills were abducted and studied by aliens from the Zeta Reticuli system, or perhaps they made the entire thing up as a publicity stunt. However, the latter is unlikely, due to their position in society at the time. Either way, this incident had massive impact on pop culture at the time, and inspired many to come forward with claims of extraterrestrial encounters that were to come. The Hills were said to be dignified people, and not the kind to make wild accusations, especially about something as controversial as aliens. The mystery remains unsolved, and likely will remain unsolved unless more evidence comes to light. That was the Hill abduction. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more videos.